Welcome everyone to this tech talk today, which is on Opus integrations. So arranging integrations with the link actions and transforms, which Jeff is going to be talking about. Just before we get started, I'm just going to introduce just background about Jeff. Just go. Oh, no, sorry, our antitrust guidelines first of all, sorry. So our classes are public, and for that reason, we just ask you not to engage in any discussions around pricing, deal making, selling, promoting, or any other activities which could be seen as anti-competitive. And for our class guidelines, again, for our class guidelines, if we just move on to the next slide, again, we do have a limited time frame for this session, so we just ask you not to initiate any company-specific examples. Having said that, if there is something that you want to raise, then we can take it offline and look into it for you. And then on that note, I'm going to introduce Jeff. So Jeff has been with TraceLink for over 10 years now. He started out as a senior software engineer, building out the robust compliance application suites like EU, Korea, etc. And then he moved to Opus Platform as Director of Engineering in 2021. And now he's responsible for network communications and connectivity teams covering network operations, B2B, transformations, API access, and other platform utility applications. So on that note, I'm going to hand over to Jeff. So thank you very much, Jeff. And then if you do have any questions, there'll be an opportunity at the end of this of the talk to ask any questions if you want to put it in the chat or unmute your line.
Good. Thanks for the intro, Laura. So we're going to jump in here into kind of just the entirety of the suite that we have for how you actually kind of go about integrating, whether it's your external systems or your business processes into TraceLink, into Opus specifically, and with a focus here on kind of how everything interacts from the outside world to your Mint application, and vice versa from your Mint application out to the outside world. So this is kind of broken up, and we're going to dive deep on these three areas, really into three different modes of operation here. So I'll actually start in the middle here. So we talk about B2B messages. So there's a lot of standards out there that anyone that's probably worked in doing integrations like these probably familiar with. So file-based B2B messaging. So this is your SFTP and your AS2 type connections using standards like X12 and EDIFACT. So all those are pretty standardized things that we support all of. So any of your external systems that leverage those types of systems or standards, you integrate once with us and everything works. There's a few other things on the other sides here that I think really kind of set us apart in terms of the types of different options you can have for integration. So on the B2B message side, again, if you're using those standards, if you have an AS2 setup or SFTP setup, works great. But we've also recently introduced about a year ago the concept of link actions. And I'm going to go deep on link actions in a bit. But basically what this allows you to do is create a direct method for syncing your transaction data from essentially any external system bidirectionally. So if you have an ERP system like a NetSuite or an MS Dynamics, what I'll walk through later is basically how you can very quickly integrate with that system just directly in the Opus configuration UI for link actions, and kind of with very little setup, be able to have data flowing bidirectionally to your external systems. So it's really what it gives is sort of a flexibility of sort of any external system you could possibly want to connect to. You can with a little bit of configuration and in some cases low code, but I'll get to that in a little bit. And then the kind of last but not least here is the sort of Mint product UI. So in a lot of cases, whether it's yourself or whether it's partners that you have, there may be cases where they maybe your partner doesn't have the ability to do an SFTP or an AS2 connection to integrate with you. They can actually just use the Mint product UI directly. So maybe you invite your partner to use your Mint product UI. They can log right in, they can do the same actions, and it still integrates with your system through whatever B2B you have set up. So basically what this gives us, this suite of sort of three sections here, is the ability to integrate anything into and out of Opus and TraceLink. Again, I'll go into these in more detail. This kind of sets the scene for the flexibility and the options that we have. Another sort of introductory here. So regardless of how you choose to integrate, whichever methods, sorry about that, whichever method you choose to integrate with, it's really up to you to decide how to integrate into Opus and into Mint, and then your partner can integrate however they want to. And it's not necessary for, like I like to say, the old days, although I know there's still a lot of this out here. This is one of the main things that we solve with our Opus integrations is the integrate once model. So you and your partner don't have to have that point-to-point connection anymore where for this partner I've agreed to use EDIFACT, and this other one it's X12, and there's all these different things. You just integrate the one time. And what ties that all together is really how we model both converting your data from your system and from your partner system into what we call our canonical format, which I'll get into a little bit, using transforms, and basically how we model the objects within the system in what we call the canonical format. So if I go to this next slide here, you'll see kind of a very high-level depiction of all those pieces that I just talked about. So if you imagine, you're a Mint application owner over here, and you're integrating with some partner on the other side of things. Your integration here can be whatever your system supports. So if you do X12 over AS2, you integrate that one time here over X12 and AS2. That comes into our XCT application. This is the application that essentially acts as the gateway from the outside world into Opus and vice versa. That information in whatever format you use. In the case of X12, it's a standard, so there's a lot of standards out there that we can deal with, but we can also deal with any custom one as well. So that gets transformed into what we call the canonical. And then that canonical information is also then transformed to the UI view. So you can imagine, I've got an X12. In this case, I'm using purchase orders as an example. Could be any transaction type. That data flows into Opus from your external system. It's converted to canonical, and there's a UI view. So you can see a visual UI representation of that purchase order, all kind of into a standardized format from whatever format that you had from the outside world. So it's really the power of combining the integration, transformation, and the use of the canonical is kind of really what ties all that together. Now, let's say you want to, send something outbound to your partner as well. Kind of works the same way, right? So now we've got this common canonical format, which when sent outbound now is tailored to whatever the external partner system wants. So maybe they have an integration with an SFTP integration that uses EDIFACT. That's sort of their problem, their configuration. As the Mint owner over here, you don't have to worry about that. That's sort of however they want to deal with the system. So no longer do you have to do this. Well, I need, X12 and I need an X12 response back. We handle all that essentially with these multiple steps. So that's really where the flexibility and the integrate once model kind of comes together. All right, so now I'm going to jump into, actually, if I go back real quick here. So as I mentioned, there's a number of different integration methods. So the AS2, SFTP, pretty standard stuff in terms of how those connections work. Using your X12, your EDIFACT, and your generally your EDI standards. But again, as I mentioned earlier, what really sets us apart is link actions, which really what this allows is connection to pretty much anything. So it's a direct API integration with any ERP system to give you that kind of full end-to-end. So what I showed here is, once again, so it's similar to that prior diagram. You see you have your ERP. In this case, we're using NetSuite as an example, but it can be any ERP system with API integration access. And you have some format that your purchase orders are in that system. Where the link action comes in is really here, where it's an API integration. In this case, it can work bi-directionally. In this case, let's say we're pulling NetSuite purchase order information from your external system. Once again, that just gets transformed into the canonical format, and all the things that you saw in the previous diagram are true. So it's just another way to be able to pull that data in, get it transformed into canonical, and then you're off and running. Similarly, this kind of extends the prior diagram as well. If your partner uses, has an SAP IDOC setup, that's fine. So it came from your system as a NetSuite purchase order in whatever format is native there, and it goes outbound to your partner in IDOC. So it's that same flow of transforming in and out. But really, where the power, we're going to zoom in next, is the power of being able to pull in and push out data to essentially any ERP type system that you have. So that's kind of where we jump in here. So like I said, this gives you really that direct API integration. And really, that's where the flexibility comes in. So any system that has API access, REST API access to, can be configured to work with a link action. So we have this concept of a catalog as well. So I talked here a little bit about the Opus Marketplace Catalog. If you're familiar with how we do our Opus solutions, and to a lesser extent how we do the transforms, which I'll talk about a little bit later, but we have this concept of a marketplace catalog, which is basically a globally available set of, in the case of a catalog, it can be anything. In this case, it's these link action scripts. So if you have a pretty standard setup, let's say you have a NetSuite system or MS Dynamics system, you can actually get up and running, and I'll show this in a demo later, very quickly by using an out-of-the-box marketplace link action. And then all you have to do is set up your configuration specific to your system. This would be like your keys and things like that to be able to connect to the system. And like I said, I do have a cool demo for that in a little bit. But there's more flexibility than that. So it's not just what can come out of the box. It's also a framework that allows the authoring of a link action script to connect to any system. So I always kind of joke, usually when I talk about this, that think about, there's no restriction, it has to be this type of ERP system or that type. It could be, I want to connect it to my laptop running at my desk. You probably wouldn't do that, but that just kind of shows you the flexibility there. Any system with API level access, you can connect to, you can pull and push data from, and that's all configured within your Opus configuration and connections. The other nice thing there too is the goal here is that what you're configuring is really your connection and that one-time integration in your Opus application, so you don't have to change anything in your third-party application. So the flexibility is really on not needing to change anything about how your current system operates. So it's and I think you may see this a lot in the point-to-point type of stuff, where it's like, oh, well, I do it this way and I do it this way, and well, you need to do it this way if you're going to talk with me and connect to my system. So that this abstracts all that away and says, however your system is, kind of come as you are with your system. A link action can be created and written to connect to that system. So what we showed here, I've talked through some of these fundamentals a little bit in the prior slide, but really, like I mentioned, that no, you don't need to do any customization outside of your Opus configuration. again, the catalog really provides that kind of out of the box capability, but you can also go beyond that and create these link action scripts to do whatever you want to do. So what I show here is just a quick configuration. There's a demo that I'm going to show in a few minutes, but kind of shows, hey, I'm creating a connection to my NetSuite system. I provide some of the credentialing details, what types of transactions I want to push and pull, and that's it. So with that, I'm going to jump into my favorite demo because I do that all in real time, and you can kind of see how it all comes together. So using the same example that I've been using, if you have a NetSuite system and basically you want to be able to push and pull purchase orders to and from your NetSuite system so that they're in Mint and you're able to interact with those also with your partner. So what I'm going to be showing in this video is basically the configuring of the UI for the link actions. I'm pulling a link action script from the catalog. And at the end, you'll see I actually pull a real transaction from a real NetSuite system. And basically, I'm starting from scratch at the beginning. So it's kind of that end to end and how quick the setups can be. So let me jump in, and I'm gonna narrate over this a bit. Sorry about the windows here. Okay, so I'm going to talk through kind of as I go here, but this is sort of your landing page in your XCT application. And what you see on the left is basically two things. So you have your B2B messages. So this is actual data flow in and out, which we'll show once we have this connection set up. And then you have your B2B connection. So what I'm doing here is coming in and saying, I want to create a new NetSuite connection. Now, this is tagged as NetSuite specifically because we have the configuration parameter specific to NetSuite. You can actually create any number of these B2B connection types on the left with the right configuration parameters that match to your system. Out of the box, we provide a lot of the common ones, as I mentioned. So you'll have, if you're doing an integration with a standard NetSuite connection, it sort of just comes out of the box for you here. So here we're putting in all of the configuration parameters and the types of transactions that we want to pull and create. In this particular case, we're doing a inbound link action for purchase order. What inbound means is essentially it's pulling or polling as well, polling the NetSuite system based on some criteria that I've set to go in there, call an API and say, give me all of the purchase orders since the last time I asked for purchase orders. And it'll pull, you see here, it pulls you can set this. In this case, it pulls every 5 minutes. When I first create it here, it will immediately start pulling. So the cool thing here is you're kind of going from nothing set up. Well, you can see here, I have a whole bunch that I had been doing as part of this test, but you're starting from basically, I have nothing set up to, I'm creating this B2B connection. I'm setting up my configuration parameters, and then I'm actually pulling real data from my system just like that. So it really creates very quick and seamless, ability to connect to your external system. So I'm going to jump ahead a little bit. I try to do, so this is sort of real time, end to end is a couple of minutes, right? And you're able to create the connection, pull the data in, and you've got a B2B message in your system, which you see at the top here. So just kind of really shows the power. I know it's high level. There's a lot of cool stuff going on under the covers. But again, if you're trying to connect to a system that already has, is one of the ones that we immediately support right out of the box, like NetSuite, MS Dynamics, and a couple others. You're pulling that from the catalog, you're putting in a few config parameters, and you're off. So, oops. Sorry, just giving me some. Okay, there we go. So that's kind of link actions in a nutshell. I'm sure there'll be some questions on that towards the end, but I want to kind of jump now to, so I've pulled in some format from some other system. I know it's a little bit hard to read here, but in this case, I'm showing an IDOC, for example. If you're familiar with some of these standards, they're a little hard to read, but that's sort of what the power of the transforms takes care of for you. So what transforms do is basically take any format that you have. It really does not matter. It can be, you know, a standard like IDOC or X12, or it can be CSV file or whatever that format is. XML, JSON, doesn't matter. The part of the ingestion process into the system, which I showed a little bit earlier, is a transform step. And the transform is kind of what it sounds like, but is always taking that external format, turning it into the canonical format. Like I said, there's a lot of standards out there. So there are a ton of these provided out of the box. But it also provides the flexibility of, if you have something that is truly, you know, a custom thing, it's totally fine. You pull that in, you either, you know, we create, or you create for yourself. It kind of works both ways. Anybody can create one of these transforms, turn it into that canonical format, and then now it's in a common language. So whoever you're integrating with or interacting with on the other end, your partner, again, doesn't matter what format they use, they can use whatever they want. So in this kind of simple example here, I use IDOC, my partner uses X12, totally fine. My data transforms into the canonical, and then when it goes out, it goes from that canonical to their X12 format. So this is really where the integrate once capability comes from, the ability to have this standardized format and be able to convert to and from that standard format, and do it in a flexible way that allows, you know, any format really to be able to be converted. Talking a little bit about the Marketplace Catalog. So again, I mentioned this in the case of link actions. In the case of transform, very similar concept, right? So we have a catalog of common types of transforms. So if you're, you know, using a standard and, you know, you have a NetSuite system, most of these things you're going to be able to just pick up off the shelf, use out of the box. If there's anything custom, you can also handle that and tailor, whether it's transform or a link action script, to work with whatever your system and setup is. And I kind of mentioned that here. There's different transform technology stuff. I don't get a lot into that here, but it does provide a lot of different options for how you can manage your data coming in and out, as far as how it transforms into whatever format you need. So I just show real quick here, kind of another one of our interfaces. This is our integration manager. And this is actually where you will come in and manage the link action scripts, which we talked about earlier, as well as your transforms. And once again, you know, you have your marketplace. I haven't talked a lot about the company catalog yet. That's just basically so if you have something that's very custom, you can create that. Let's say you're doing your system validation on our validation environment. You can create a transform there, do some of your validation testing, and then promote it directly, only scope to your company, promote it to production, and then you're off and running in production. So the catalog provides a lot of the kind of ease of use of creating, going through your validation, your testing, and then promoting it out to production. And the configurations are very similar to a lot of what I showed on the B2B connection side. Is I don't have a screen here, but you're basically going in and you're setting up what transform do I want to use in what situation, all through, you know, very intuitive user experience. And you can configure it in different ways in terms of, if it's this connection or this transaction type, I want to use this type of transform. So it can be as simple or as complex as your business operations are. So if it's, you know, I have multiple locations and each of them has a different ERP system, that can all be handled through these configurations as well. So last but not least, again here, so the Mint UI itself, like I said earlier, works in very much the same way, right? So instead of having an external system here where I'm pulling data and it's transforming into canonical and it's transforming into the Mint UI. I can actually come in, and the example I showed here is, let's say you have a purchase order acknowledgement that you want to share with your partner. I can actually come in here, create the purchase order acknowledgement directly in the UI, and send it to my partner. And my partner, in this case, uses IDOC. I don't know that, and I don't care. I'm creating the purchase order in the UI. It's following that same process we've been showing, where it is transformed from the UI format to canonical. I've got my purchase order acknowledgement canonical here. And then because the partner has chosen that they want the outbound in IDOC format, it's converted to IDOC format and it's sent to their ERP system, however they've got that configured. So again, it's another kind of modality that you can use to, whether it's you're interacting with your partners, or I think in a lot of cases, if you, like I said earlier, if you have a partner that's less technically inclined, or they don't necessarily have all of these ERP systems set up, they can come directly as a partner in part of one of your process networks. They can come directly into the UI. They can acknowledge a PO that you send, and you're still your system, your external ERP system is still interacting in the way that it's used to, but the partner can interact with the UI. You don't have to worry about how that interaction works. So just kind of a visual here as well. Again, you're really seeing kind of the B2B data flow in your Mint application here. And again, you're interacting with those transactions and those messages in the user experience in sort of a native way that isn't dictated by my system is this format, my partner system is this format. It really kind of homogenizes all of that together into one view. So you can see all of your data flow, again, regardless of the method. It's here's all my purchase orders. In this case, we have some PO acknowledgements, some purchase orders, and some ship notices. They all kind of converge into one place in the Mint UI, and it's sort of your hub for all of your integration, whether it's data inbound, data outbound, or both across all of your systems. All right, so recapping a bit here. So flexible integration methods. So all of these integration models really give you kind of infinite possibilities for how does my system work? How do I want to do that, integrate that single integration point? And then you're in. So you've made that single integrate once, and now once you've done that, you're connected, right? You're connected to the network. And once again, your partners can interact and integrate into the network however they want to, and it's all seamless between the two, and you don't have to directly speak that same language anymore. On the link action side, the real-time API integration. So again, this is, I think, this is really what gives the power to these integrations, is the ability to connect to really any system and have that real-time API integration, pulling data and pushing data in real time. The transforms we talked about give sort of that consistent data exchange. So at the end of the day, regardless of the format that you use externally, that can be transformed into our internal format, our canonical format. And then you're good to go once you're in that format. So it really, again, adds that extra layer of simplicity and allows that integrate once model to happen. Adaptable integration. So with all those pieces, really you can integrate any which way that you want. Your partners can integrate any which way that they want, and there's kind of infinite combinations of those things. So if you're integrating, like I said, with an ERP system and your partner is less technically savvy and they come into the UI, it really doesn't matter. And maybe they come into the UI, that's how they integrate now, and they create a more sophisticated system later. They just change their integration into TraceLink, and you wouldn't even know. You're just still interacting the same way that you're used to. And lastly here, we talked about the catalog in a couple of different contexts. So whether it's the transforms or the link actions, while it's not part of this talk, the solutions also work the exact same way in terms of the catalog management. But so you get your transforms and link actions either in the Marketplace Catalog, which will sort of have an array of these more standard systems and setups. You can just pick it up and start running, like I showed you in the demo, in a couple of minutes. Or again, you can also get as detailed as needed for any custom system or integration that you have. All right, so now questions.
Thank you, Jeff. That was
Yep.
really interesting. I guess it seems like there's so much flexibility. I guess before I ask questions, Kirsten, do you
Yep.
have any questions?
I don't have questions. And in fact, we're looking at some of the integrations that you're talking about with NetSuite.
Yep.
I'm also interested in some of the things we might be doing with some of our manufacturing as a virtual, getting some of their data from batch records or device history records, that kind of thing, and bringing it in a more seamless way. Have you seen
Yep.
some of that done?
Yeah, we've had a number of different system integrations so far. So really, it really comes down to more so just the physical, like how you connect to those systems. Whatever the data you pull in, given the sort of transform and canonical process and having those integrated into the Mint application, pretty much the sky is the limit as far as that goes. So the actual type of data is less of a concern. It's more just that connectivity and how that system is set up and how you want to connect and pull data out. So but we do have quite a few customers on board already with that real-time data integration, primarily from what I've seen recently, your purchase orders, your sales orders, your purchase order acknowledgements, but it's really sky's the limit in terms of what you can pull any type of data from your external system using link actions, and then integrating with the applications.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks, Kirsten. Yeah, I guess I just wanted to understand. So you explained integrating internal systems is simple, but how long would it typically take to integrate, for example, an ERP with standard configuration versus a more complex system? And what support is provided with that integration?
Yeah, sure. So I think the simplest version is sort of the demo that I showed. So basically, the simplest case is like standard NetSuite system. You can pull that down directly from the catalog, and at that point, it's just getting the configuration parameters set up, and that's it, and you're good to go. On the more complex end, if you're using maybe on some non-standard system or something that we don't necessarily support yet in the catalog, there is also a capability, and we have a sandbox tool and a way to build the scripts themselves that interact with those external systems. So kind of fits into our sort of our low code options, where there's an SDK and a sandbox. You can write whatever that connectivity is to your external system. For the most part, that's very minimal. The joke I like to make, which I think I made earlier, is I could write a link action that talks to my laptop and pulls data from it if I wanted to. So you're really just writing that logic that says, how do I go out to that system, pull the data back? But that once you've done that, your configuration is very similar, right? So it's whatever those configuration parameters are for that setup, and then obviously your testing and integration, which you can do all from within the UI itself, in the validation environment. So it can definitely vary. I mean, if there's a very complex, system, for the most part, though, what we see is, there's a single API, like, get my purchase orders or whatever. So it's a very simple couple of lines to pull that in, and then pass that through to the B2B system. So it can vary widely, but I think
catalog.
Sorry, say that again.
That would be using a standard catalog then.
Not well, so you can create your own and put that into your own company catalog as well. So similar to what I mentioned with the transform. So if I write my own, I put that into my company catalog, and then I can configure it in just the same way. I'm just pulling from my company's catalog versus the marketplace catalog. But it can be as custom as necessary, using the company catalog and writing the link action myself as well. We haven't seen a lot of that yet, but.
Oh, I'm sorry, Jeff. Where do we find the
sure.
marketplace catalog in the Opus system?
So you'll see, actually, I can show you I think I had the example of it here. Let me check. So we have an application called Integration Manager. Yeah, it looks kind of something like this. Whoops, sorry about that. So this is actually where it's kind of the one-stop shop of link action. So you'll see it's not folded down here, but you'll have your link action, your company and marketplace link actions here, and then also your transforms and your marketplace and company transforms. So it's basically how you get here is the app selector, and then you'll have Integration Manager, and then you'll be able to see all of those different link action and transform integrations.
And that's specific to the Mint subscription. It isn't necessarily in the application that we're going to as a system administrator. It's only in Mint.
No, it's not only Mint. This is a app that can be used to create these integrations for any application.
Okay.
So if you're using our APT application or any other Opus application, this is a common setup. So you can create link actions, you can create transforms that can pull data and transform into any transaction type for any application. I know it's very Mint heavy, the presentation here, because that's sort of our prime use case here, but it actually is works in any application, any Opus application.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks. And I guess just another question for me. What happens if a customer were to acquire a company with a different file format or system?
Yeah, so I know there's some interesting complexities with the acquisitions and stuff. Normally what we've seen is in a lot of cases, so you have maybe two nodes on the network before. Well, let's say it's not. There's a few different combinations, but let's say you have a company who's already integrated into Opus. They acquire another company that's got their own ERP systems and their own this and their own that. That company that they purchased could actually be modeled as a location of the company with its own B2B connections, its own integrations with external systems. So I think the way that would generally work, and we have had a few examples of this semi-recently, is basically it's just another B2B integration with those external systems. Once the data gets into the system, though, it can be treated at, it's part of that company that acquired the other company proper, or it can be treated, sometimes it's like still, I don't know, subsidiary or something like that, can also be treated or modeled in such a way that it's like a location or whatever of the company. And then the data can kind of flow under that company's umbrella, but have different attributes saying, it's this location or it's this subsidiary or whatever it is. So, so the short answer is just we create another B2B connection connecting to that external system, whatever they have. Again, the format can be anything, because at the end of the day, it's going to be transformed in the same way. So it can come from, and even outside of acquisitions, we've seen this with certain customers that just have different locations and they happen to use different systems. So those, all of those systems can be separate.
They're trying to
they may keep the data separate, or they
entities. I don't know.
Yeah, exactly right. So but everything can come into through a B2B connection, through the transforms, and then it's it's in that internal canonical format and kind of works the same as everything else. So.
And how does that appear for the partner side? Is everything seamless? Like if there is a change, if new systems are acquired, then is it seamless on the partner side? Are they none the wiser that something's happened on the partners in.
Potentially, yeah. If that partner is integrated already, let's say the partner's integrated with Opus and you've got the company and they've been communicating all along. Yeah, they could actually be none the wiser. I mean, there's some nuance to, you know, in a lot of cases with like locations or subsidiaries, there will be some indication of like, this is from this company, but you know, the purchase order is from this location of the company or whatever. So that information can be you know, persisted across. But yeah, it wouldn't change anything about the partners integration, right? Because they have their single integration and they're going to get it in whatever format into whatever system that they have, regardless of how it originated. So in that case, would stay completely seamless to the partner.
Great, thank you. Kirsten, do you have any more questions?
No, thank you. This has been really helpful.
Yes, thank you, Jeff.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
if anyone does have any questions relating to this, please feel free to email tracelinkuniversity@tracelink.com, and the recording is going to be posted up on TLU as well.
Thank
but
you,
that
Laura.
was super interesting. Thanks, Jeff, and thanks,
Awesome.
Kirsten.
Yeah, thank you,
Thanks.
Jeff.
Thanks,
Have a
Kristen.
great day.
Yeah, you guys too.
Thank you. Take care. Bye.
Bye-bye.